Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face with a dirty rag. Deep in the belly of the starship Starfire, the air was hot and thick. The massive engines around him hummed like angry giants. Red warning lights flashed on every wall. "Come on, you piece of junk," Jake muttered as he crawled under a power coupling. The ship's main power grid was acting up again. For the third time this week, the readings made no sense. Jake had been working on ships since he was 16. His father was a miner on Earth's outer colonies. His mother fixed broken equipment in the shipping yards. Neither of them went to fancy schools or wore clean uniforms. They just worked hard and got things done. Jake learned from them. The Starfire was different from the old mining ships back home. This was a Federation flagship. It carried diplomats and ambassadors from dozens of alien worlds. Everything was supposed to be perfect. Everything was supposed to work exactly right. But machines were machines, and Jake understood machines. He traced the power lines with his fingers. The alien engineers who designed this ship were smart. Too smart, maybe. They had built systems inside systems inside systems. When something went wrong, their computers tried to fix it automatically, but sometimes the computers made things worse. Jake found the problem in a junction box the size of a closet. 3 different power feeds were fighting each other. The ship's computer kept trying to balance them, but it was like trying to stop 3 people from arguing by shouting louder. "Ryan!" Jake called out. His best friend appeared from behind a coolant tank. Ryan Blake was built like a tree trunk and had grease under his fingernails just like Jake. "What you got?" Ryan asked. "Look at this mess." Jake pointed to the tangled wires. "The computer thinks it's helping, but it's making everything worse. We need to shut down the auto balance and let the power flow natural-like." Ryan scratched his head. "The chief engineer won't like that. She's one of those blue-skinned Alterians. They think their way is the only way." "Their way is about to blow out half the ship's power grid," Jake said. "We got about 2 hours before the whole system crashes. And guess what happens tonight?" "Oh no." Ryan's eyes went wide. "The big fancy party. The Diplomatic Corps Gala." Jake had heard about it for weeks. Every important person on the ship would be there. Aliens in expensive clothes, humans trying to impress them, and enough fancy food to feed a small planet. Jake didn't care about parties, but he cared about the ship. And he cared about the people on it. "I'm going to bypass the computer," Jake said. "Just for this section. Let the power flow the way it wants to." "That's not in the manual," Ryan warned. The manual didn't fix this problem. Jake was already pulling tools from his belt. Sometimes you got to think like a human instead of a computer. For the next hour, Jake worked in silence. He rerouted power lines and disabled safety systems. He created a new path for the electricity that made sense to him, but would probably give the alien engineers heart attacks. When he was done, the red warning lights stopped flashing. The angry humming became a gentle purr. The ship's power grid settled into a steady rhythm like a sleeping giant. "Well, I'll be damned," Ryan said, watching the readings on his tablet. "It's working better than it has in months." Jake nodded. He felt good when he fixed things. It was better than any prize or medal. It was the feeling of making something work right. 20 minutes later, Chief Engineer Calathon arrived with 2 assistants. She was tall and blue with silver markings on her face that showed her rank. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Explain this modification," she demanded, looking at Jake's work. Jake explained what he had done and why. Calathon's assistants whispered to each other in their own language. They sounded shocked. "This is not Federation standard," Calathon said. "Federation standard wasn't working," Jake replied. "This is." Calathon studied the power readings on her tablet for a long time. Finally, she looked up at Jake. "Your method is, crude, but effective. The power grid is stable." "Yes, ma'am. Do not modify any other systems without permission." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The captain will want to know who prevented a power failure on the day of the gala." After she left, Ryan punched Jake in the shoulder. "You know what this means? You're going to get recognition at the fancy party tonight." Jake groaned. "I hate fancy parties. Come on, man. Free food, pretty women, and they're going to say nice things about you in front of important people." "I don't belong in that world, Ryan. Those people wear clean uniforms and know which fork to use. I fix engines and get dirty for a living." "So, you just saved their party. Maybe you belong there more than they do." Jake looked around at the engine room. This was his world. Down here, things made sense. You had a problem, you found a solution, you fixed it. Up there in the world of diplomats and commanders, nothing was that simple. But maybe Ryan was right. Maybe tonight would be different. 3 hours later, Jake stood in front of a mirror in his quarters. He wore his dress uniform, the one he only used for inspections. It felt tight and uncomfortable. His hair was combed back and he had scrubbed the grease from under his fingernails. "You look like a real space officer," Ryan said, adjusting Jake's collar. "I look like I'm playing dress-up. Just remember what you did today. You saved this ship. That counts for something." Jake nodded, but he still felt nervous. In a few minutes, he would walk into a room full of the most powerful people in the galaxy. They would all be watching him, judging him, wondering what a maintenance worker was doing at their fancy party. He had no idea that across the ship, Commander Lisa Vance was having the exact same thoughts. Commander Lisa Vance stood in front of her mirror and hated everything she saw. The dress uniform fit perfectly. Her hair was pulled back in a regulation style. Her medals were polished and straight. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, but she felt like a lie. "Lisa, are you ready?" Her father's voice came through the door. Admiral Vance never knocked. He announced his presence like he was claiming territory. "Almost, sir," she called back. She had learned long ago to call him sir instead of dad when they were on duty. Which was always. Admiral Vance entered without waiting for permission. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes. Everything about him was sharp and military. "You understand how important tonight is," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. The Altarian delegation is considering new trade agreements. The Zenthari are still upset about the mining rights dispute, and Ambassador Kethvar wants to discuss Earth's application for advanced technology sharing." "Good. Remember, you represent more than yourself tonight. Every word you say, every person you talk to, every smile you give reflects on humanity's place in the Federation." Lisa nodded. She had heard this speech before. "Be perfect. Be charming. Make everyone like humans. Don't mess up. I won't disappoint you, sir." Admiral Vance studied her face for a moment. "You never have. That's why you're here instead of on some patrol ship in the Outer Rim." After he left, Lisa sat on her bed and closed her eyes. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she had been born to different parents. If her father was a farmer or a teacher instead of an admiral, would she have chosen this life or had it chosen for her? The gala was being held in the ship's main hall. When the doors opened, Lisa stepped into a world of light and color. The hall had been transformed into something magical. Floating lights danced in the air. Tables covered in white cloth held food from dozens of worlds. Music played softly in the background. Aliens in fancy clothes moved through the crowd like colorful birds. The Altarians wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of liquid metal. The Zenthari had crystal decorations woven into their fur. Even the humans looked exotic in their dress uniforms. Lisa put on her public smile and began working the room. She spoke to a trade minister about grain exports. She listened to a military attaché complain about patrol schedules. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny and nodded at opinions she didn't share. This was her job. This was what she was good at. But every smile felt fake. Commander Vance. A voice like breaking glass made her turn around. Ambassador Kethvar stood behind her. He was tall even for an Altarian, with silver skin and purple markings that showed his high rank. "Ambassador."
"How are you enjoying the evening?"
"It is adequate." Kethvar looked around the room like he was inspecting cattle. "I understand we have you to thank for tonight's stable power supply." Lisa looked confused. "Sir, one of your human engineers prevented a power failure today. Crude methods, but effective. Very human." Before Lisa could respond, Captain Nina Cross appeared on the small stage at the front of the room. She was a veteran officer with gray streaks in her hair and scars on her hands from real battles. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored guests," Captain Cross began. "Before we continue tonight's festivities, I want to recognize someone. Earlier today, our ship faced a critical power failure that could have ruined this evening. One person prevented that disaster through quick thinking and innovative problem-solving." Lisa found herself looking around the room, curious about this mysterious hero. "Petty Officer Jake Morrison, please come forward." A young man near the back of the room looked like he wanted to disappear. He was shorter than most of the aliens around him, with brown hair and calloused hands. His dress uniform looked uncomfortable on him, but when Captain Cross called his name again, he walked forward. Lisa watched him approach the stage. There was something honest about the way he moved. He didn't swagger like some officers. He didn't try to look important. He just walked like a man who had work to do. Petty Officer Morrison used unconventional methods to solve a complex engineering problem. Captain Cross continued. His approach wasn't in any manual, but it saved our ship. This is what human innovation looks like. The crowd clapped politely. Ambassador Kethavar made a sound that might have been laughter. Crude human luck, he said loudly enough for people nearby to hear. Any properly trained engineer could have done the same. Lisa felt her jaw tighten. She had heard that tone before. It was the sound of someone dismissing human achievements as accidents or inferior thinking. Jake Morrison heard it too. Lisa saw his shoulders stiffen, but he didn't respond. He just accepted his commendation and tried to blend back into the crowd. The formal dancing began a few minutes later. This was the part Lisa dreaded most. She would dance with important aliens, making small talk while trying not to step on their various feet, claws, and tentacles. But instead of joining the diplomatic dance partners, she found herself walking toward the back of the room where Jake Morrison stood alone. Petty Officer Morrison? He turned around, his eyes wide with surprise. Ma'am? I'm Commander Vance. I wanted to congratulate you on your work today. Thank you, ma'am. Just doing my job. Lisa looked around the room. Ambassador Kethavar was watching them with obvious disapproval. Her father was in deep conversation with a Zenthari general. The music was playing, and couples were already moving onto the dance floor. Would you like to dance? She heard herself ask. Jake Morrison looked like she had just asked him to juggle fire. Ma'am, I don't know the formal steps. I'm just an engineer, so I'll teach you. Lisa held out her hand. You saved this ship today. I think that earns you a dance. Ma'am, with respect, I don't think that's a good idea. People are watching. Lisa looked around the room again. People were indeed watching. Ambassador Kethavar looked shocked. Her father had stopped talking and was staring at her. The other human officers looked nervous. Let them watch, she said. Take my hand. Jake Morrison hesitated for another moment, then took her hand. His fingers were rough from work, honest hands that fixed things and made them better. As they walked onto the dance floor, Lisa heard Ambassador Kethavar's voice cutting through the music. This is inappropriate, he said loudly. A commander dancing with a maintenance worker. It violates proper hierarchy. Lisa stopped walking. She turned to face the ambassador, still holding Jake's hand. Ambassador Kethavar, she said in a voice that carried across the room. This man just saved our ship with his mind while you were complaining about the wine selection. I'd say that makes him exactly the right rank to dance with me. The room went quiet. Even the music seemed to pause. Jake Morrison looked at her with something that might have been admiration. Are you sure about this, Commander? Lisa smiled, and for the first time all evening it felt real. I've never been more sure of anything. Now shall we dance? They began to move to the music. Jake was right, he didn't know the formal steps. But he learned quickly and he was a good listener. Lisa found herself laughing as she taught him the basic moves. Around them, the room slowly came back to life. Some people whispered. Others smiled. A few couples joined them on the dance floor. But for Lisa and Jake, the rest of the room might as well have disappeared. For the first time in years, Lisa felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The next morning, Jake Morrison woke up to find 3 messages waiting on his tablet. The first was from his shift supervisor, telling him to report to Chief Engineer Calathon immediately. The second was from someone he didn't recognize, using words he couldn't repeat in polite company. The third was from Ryan. You crazy fool. Ryan's message read, half the ship is talking about you. The other half wants to throw you out an airlock. See you at breakfast. Jake got dressed slowly. His dress uniform was hanging in the closet, clean and pressed. Last night felt like a dream. He had danced with Commander Lisa Vance, actually danced, in front of ambassadors and generals and people who ruled whole planets, and she had defended him. The corridor outside his quarters was busier than usual. When Jake walked past a group of Alterian technicians, they stopped talking and stared at him. One of them said something in their language that sounded like an insult. In the mess hall, Ryan was waiting with breakfast and a big grin. So how does it feel to be famous? Feels like trouble, Jake said, sitting down with his food. Come on, man. You danced with the hottest commander on the ship. That's got to count for something. Before Jake could answer, 3 human officers sat down at their table without being invited. Jake recognized them from the engine room. They were senior technicians, the kind who followed orders and never questioned authority. Morrison, one of them said, What you did last night was stupid. I danced with a fellow officer, Jake replied. Last I checked, that wasn't a crime. You made us all look bad, another one said. Humans are trying to earn respect in the Federation. We can't do that if people like you forget their place. Jake felt his temper rising. My place? I saved this ship yesterday. I prevented a power failure that would have ruined the gala. What's your place in all this? The first officer leaned forward. Your place is in the engine room, fixing things and staying out of sight. Leave the diplomatic stuff to people who know what they're doing. Ryan started to stand up, but Jake put a hand on his arm. It's okay, Jake said. They're just scared. Scared of what? The officer demanded. Scared that maybe rank doesn't matter as much as they thought. Scared that being good at your job might be more important than having the right parents or the right school or the right connections. The officers left without another word. Ryan shook his head. You really know how to make friends. They were never my friends anyway. After breakfast, Jake reported to the chief engineer's office. Calathon was waiting for him along with two other Altarian officers. Their silver faces showed no emotion. Petty Officer Morrison, Calathon began. Your actions last night have created complications. Yes, ma'am. Several alien delegations have expressed concern about human respect for proper hierarchy. They worry that humans do not understand their place in the Federation structure. Jake said nothing. He had learned that sometimes the best answer was silence. However, Calathon continued, your engineering work yesterday was exceptional. We have analyzed your modifications to the power grid. Your approach was unorthodox but highly effective. One of the other Altarians stepped forward. We would like you to examine our waste recycling systems. They have been inefficient for months. Perhaps your unconventional methods might be useful. Jake nodded. I'd be happy to take a look. Good, but Morrison? Calathon's voice was stern. Focus on engineering. Leave politics to the politicians. Meanwhile, 3 decks up, Commander Lisa Vance was having her own difficult conversation. She sat in Captain Cross's office feeling like a student called to the principal. Captain Cross was reading something on her tablet. She was a tough woman who had fought in real battles and earned her rank through blood and sweat instead of family connections. Interesting night, Captain Cross said without looking up. Yes, ma'am, your father is concerned. Ambassador Kethvar is offended, and half the diplomatic corps thinks you've lost your mind. Lisa waited for the punishment that was surely coming. Personally, Captain Cross continued, I think it was about time someone shook things up around here. Lisa looked up in surprise. Ma'am? Lisa, I've known you since you were a cadet. You're smart, capable, and you understand politics better than most, but you've been playing by other people's rules your whole life. The rules exist for a reason, Captain. Some rules exist to maintain order. Other rules exist to keep certain people in power. Captain Cross finally looked up from her tablet. Last night you made a choice. You chose to judge a man by his actions instead of his rank. That took courage. It also created problems. Good choices often do. Captain Cross stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through space. The Federation is built on the idea that different species can work together. But some species think they're more equal than others. What should I do? Your job. Be a good officer. Work with your team. And don't let anyone tell you that competence is less important than breeding. Lisa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Thank you, Captain. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. There are people on this ship who think humans need to stay in their place. They're going to test you. Captain Cross was right. Over the next few days, Lisa faced a series of small challenges. Important meetings that she wasn't invited to. Reports that didn't reach her desk on time. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. But there were also surprises. Several junior officers, both human and alien, made a point of speaking to her. They didn't say much, but their message was clear. They supported what she had done. Jake was having his own experiences. Some crew members treated him like he had a disease. Others asked for his opinion on technical problems they had never bothered to discuss with him before. The waste recycling systems turned out to be a more interesting challenge than expected. The Altarian design was elegant but inflexible. When something went wrong, the whole system shut down and waited for repair crews. Jake redesigned the system to be more like human technology, crude but adaptable. Instead of one perfect solution, He created multiple backup systems that could work together or separately as needed. When he presented his solution to the engineering staff, Collathan studied it for a long time. "This is not how we would approach the problem," she said finally. "No, ma'am, but it works." "Yes, it does." She looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. "Your methods are educational." 3 days after the gala, Jake was working late in the engine room when the ship's alarm system activated. Red lights flashed and a voice echoed through the corridors. "All personnel to emergency stations. We are experiencing a spatial anomaly. All personnel to emergency stations." Jake felt the ship shake around him. This wasn't a normal engine vibration. This was something else entirely. He ran to the main engineering console and pulled up the ship's sensor readings. What he saw made his blood turn cold. The Starfire had encountered something that shouldn't exist. A tear in space itself was opening next to the ship, and it was getting bigger. Jake hit the emergency communication button, engineering to bridge. "We have a problem down here." Captain Cross's voice came back immediately. "What's your status, Morrison?" "Captain, this anomaly is affecting our hull integrity. The ship's structure is starting to bend. If this continues, we're going to come apart at the seams." "Understood. Stand by." Jake watched the readings get worse by the minute. The Federation's best scientists would probably want to study this phenomenon for months. They would run computer simulations and consult ancient texts and debate the theoretical implications. But Jake wasn't a scientist. He was an engineer, and he could see that they had maybe an hour before the ship broke apart. He started running calculations in his head. There had to be a solution. There was always a solution. You just had to think like a human instead of a computer. The bridge of the Starfire was chaos. Officers ran between stations, calling out readings and trying to understand what was happening. The main screen showed a sight that defied explanation, a crack in space itself, growing larger every minute. Captain Cross stood in the center of it all, calm as always. "A report," she ordered. "The anomaly appeared without warning," said the science officer, a Zenthari with silver fur. "It's generating massive gravitational distortions. Our hull is under stress. Recommendations? Standard protocol is to reverse course and maintain safe distance while we study the phenomenon." "We're trying," said the navigation officer. "But the anomaly is pulling us toward it. Our engines can't break free." Captain Cross hit her communication button. "Engineering, this is the bridge. We need more power to the engines." Jake's voice came back immediately. "Captain, more power won't help. The anomaly isn't just pulling on our ship. It's pulling on space itself. It's like trying to outrun a whirlpool by swimming faster." "Then what do you suggest?" There was a pause. When Jake spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "Captain, I need to run some tests. Give me 10 minutes. In the engine room, Jake was already deep in his calculations. The anomaly was creating vibrations in space-time itself. He could feel them through the ship's hull like standing next to a giant machine with a broken gear. Every engineering textbook said this was impossible. Spatial anomalies were supposed to be random events, chaotic disturbances that followed no pattern. But Jake had spent his life listening to machines, and this felt like a machine with a specific rhythm. He pulled up the ship's sensor data and started looking for patterns. There, the gravitational waves were pulsing at regular intervals. The anomaly was breathing like a living thing. Jake ran to the engine control panel and started adjusting the ship's power output. Instead of fighting the anomaly's pull, he tried to match its rhythm. The ship's engines began pulsing in time with the gravitational waves. "Morrison, what are you doing down there?" Captain Cross's voice echoed through the engine room. "Testing a theory, Captain. The anomaly has a harmonic frequency. If I can match it, maybe we can slip away during its weak points." "Explain." Jake thought about how to put his idea into words that made sense. "It's like a rocking chair, Captain. If you push at the wrong time, you fight against it. But if you push at the right time, you can change its direction." On the bridge, the science officer was shaking his head. "That's not how spatial anomalies work. They don't have frequencies or rhythms. They're random distortions." "The readings say otherwise," Captain Cross replied, watching the data from engineering. "Morrison, continue your test." For the next few minutes, Jake fine-tuned the engines. Slowly, carefully, he began to synchronize the ship's power output with the anomaly's pulse. And something amazing happened. The pull on the ship began to weaken. "It's working," reported the navigation officer. "The gravitational distortion is decreasing. But Jake's celebration was short-lived. The anomaly suddenly changed its rhythm, like a heart skipping beats. The gravitational pull became stronger and more erratic. "Captain," Jake called over the comm, "the anomaly is adapting. It's learned to counter my frequency matching. We need a different approach." Chief Engineer Calathon arrived in the engine room with 2 assistants. Her silver face was pale with worry. "Morrison, explain your methods," Jake pointed to his readings. "The anomaly isn't random. It's responding to our ship like we're a foreign object. The more we fight it, the stronger it gets. That is impossible. Spatial anomalies are not intelligent. Maybe not intelligent, but they're not dead either." Jake was already working on a new plan. "What if we don't fight it? What if we become part of its rhythm instead of opposing it?" Calathon looked confused. "Explain." "Back home, my dad worked in the mines. Sometimes the tunnels would start to collapse. The smart miners didn't try to hold them up. They moved with the collapse, riding it to safety. You want to ride a spatial anomaly? I want to turn our entire ship into a tuning fork. Every system, every power coupling, every piece of equipment synchronized to the anomaly's frequency. Instead of being pulled apart, we become part of its harmonic structure." Calathon's assistants were speaking rapidly in Alterian. They sounded shocked and frightened. "This is not in any Federation manual," Calathon said. "The manual didn't prevent this problem," Jake replied, "and it won't solve it either." On the bridge, Captain Cross was listening to the conversation. Around her, officers were preparing evacuation procedures. The ship was being pulled inexorably toward the anomaly. "Captain," said the science officer, "we should abandon ship. The escape pods can clear the gravitational field." "How long do we have?" Captain Cross asked. 20 minutes, maybe less." Captain Cross hit her comm button. "Morrison, how long do you need for your plan?" "If it works, 15 minutes to synchronize all systems. If it doesn't work, well, we'll know pretty quickly." The science officer stepped forward. "Captain, this is madness. We should follow established evacuation protocols." "Protocols that abandon a perfectly good ship?" Captain Cross looked around the bridge. "Morrison's unconventional thinking saved us from a power failure. Maybe it can save us from this too." "Captain," came Lisa's voice over the comm, "I'm in the diplomatic section. The alien ambassadors are demanding immediate evacuation. They say human experimental methods are too dangerous." Ambassador Kethvar's voice joined the conversation. "Captain Cross, this is reckless. Your engineer is proposing to use the entire ship as an experimental device. This violates every safety protocol in the Federation." Jake's voice cut through the argument. "Captain, I need to get to the main power coupling to make this work. It's in the most dangerous part of the ship, where the gravitational stress is strongest, but I need someone to coordinate communications between all departments. Someone who understands both engineering and diplomacy." There was a moment of silence. Then Lisa's voice came over the comm. "I volunteer." "Lisa, no," came Admiral Vance's voice. "You're not qualified for this kind of operation." "With respect, sir, I think I am." Lisa's voice was steady and determined. "I understand the technical requirements and I can coordinate between departments. This is what I trained for." Captain Cross made her decision. "Morrison, you have 15 minutes. Commander Vance will assist with communications coordination. All other personnel, prepare for emergency evacuation but remain at stations." In the engine room, Jake was already moving toward the most dangerous section of the ship. The gravitational stress here was so intense that the walls were beginning to bend. But this was where the main power coupling was located, the heart of the ship's electrical system. Lisa arrived just as he was opening the access panel. She had changed from her dress uniform into work clothes, and she carried a portable communication unit. "You didn't have to come," Jake said. "Yes, I did." Lisa connected her equipment to the ship's communication system. "You'll need real-time coordination between all departments. And besides," she smiled, "someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed." Jake began the most complex engineering procedure of his life. Using Lisa as his link to the rest of the ship, he started synchronizing every system to match the anomaly's harmonic frequency. The ship began to sing. The Starfire was singing. Every system on the ship hummed in perfect harmony with the spatial anomaly. The engines pulsed like a heartbeat. The lights flickered in rhythm. Even the artificial gravity generators added their voice to the strange music. Jake stood in the most dangerous part of the ship, his hands flying over control panels as he fine-tuned the harmonic frequency. Beside him, Lisa coordinated with every department, her voice calm and professional despite the chaos around them. Engineering to Medical Bay, Lisa called into her communicator. Reduce life support power by 12% and synchronize with the main frequency. Medical Bay to Engineering, came the reply. Power reduced. We're in sync. The gravitational stress on the ship's hull began to decrease. Instead of fighting the anomaly, the Starfire was becoming part of it. The tear in space no longer saw the ship as a foreign object to be crushed, but as a natural element in its harmonic structure. It's working, Jake said, watching his readings. The anomaly is accepting us. But the process wasn't complete. Jake needed to make one final adjustment to the main power coupling. The access panel was located in a section where the gravitational distortion was still dangerous. The metal walls around them groaned under stress. Jake, Lisa said, the power coupling is overloading. If you don't adjust it in the next 2 minutes, we'll lose synchronization. Jake nodded and crawled into the access tunnel. The space was barely large enough for a person, and the gravitational waves made his head spin. But he had to reach the main coupling. Engineering to bridge, Lisa called. We're making the final adjustment now. On the bridge, Captain Cross watched the readings with tense concentration. The ship's harmony with the anomaly was holding, but barely. If Jake's adjustment failed, they would have seconds to evacuate before the ship came apart. All stations report ready for emergency evacuation, announced the navigation officer. Stand by, Captain Cross replied. Her faith in Jake Morrison had brought them this far. She wasn't going to abandon that faith now. In the access tunnel, Jake found the main power coupling. It was a junction box the size of a refrigerator, crackling with electrical energy. The gravitational distortion made it hard to think, but Jake forced himself to focus. He began rerouting the power flow, matching it to the frequency pattern he had calculated. The ship's harmony grew stronger and more stable. The Starfire was no longer fighting the anomaly. It was dancing with it. Final synchronization complete, Jake called out. The effect was immediate. The gravitational pull on the ship disappeared entirely. The tear in space began to shrink, its harmonic needs satisfied by the ship's synchronized energy output. Anomaly is closing, reported the science officer, amazement in his voice. Gravitational distortion dropping to normal levels. Jake crawled out of the access tunnel, exhausted but triumphant. Lisa was smiling at him with genuine admiration. We did it, she said. You mean I did it? Jake replied with a grin. You just talked on the radio. I coordinated 14 different departments, synchronized their power outputs, and kept you from getting killed. Lisa shot back. I'd say that makes us partners. On the bridge, the main screen showed empty space where the anomaly had been. The Starfire was safe, drifting in normal space with all systems functioning. All stations stand down from emergency status, Captain Cross announced. Secure all systems and prepare for normal operations. The celebration on the bridge was quiet but heartfelt. Officers shook hands and patted each other on the back. They had faced something impossible and survived through teamwork and unconventional thinking. Ambassador Kethvar approached Captain Cross with an expression that might have been respect. Captain, your engineer's methods were most educational. Thank you, Ambassador. I must admit I was wrong about human capabilities. Your species has a talent for finding solutions where others see only problems. Chief Engineer Calathon's voice came over the comm system. Bridge, this is engineering. All systems stable. The harmonic synchronization method has been logged for future reference. I recommend that Petty Officer Morrison be assigned to our advanced engineering team. Agreed, Captain Cross replied. Morrison, report to the bridge. When Jake arrived on the bridge, still in his work clothes and covered in grease, he found himself facing a room full of senior officers and alien dignitaries. A week ago, this would have terrified him. Now, he just felt tired and ready for a hot meal. Petty Officer Morrison, Captain Cross began, your unconventional thinking has saved this ship twice in 1 week. The Federation Admiralty will want a full report on your methods. Yes, ma'am. In the meantime, you're being promoted to Chief Specialist Advanced Engineering. You'll work directly with the diplomatic corps on technical solutions for interspecies cooperation. Jake looked over at Lisa, who was trying not to smile too obviously. Does that mean I get to work with Commander Vance? That depends, Captain Cross said. Commander Vance, the diplomatic corps has requested that you head a new department, Innovative Solutions Coordination. Your job would be to identify unconventional approaches to political and technical problems. Are you interested? Lisa straightened her shoulders. Yes, ma'am. Very interested. Good. Your first assignment is to work with Chief Specialist Morrison on a comprehensive review of Federation engineering protocols. Apparently, there's a lot we can learn from human problem-solving methods. 3. Months later, the Starfire held another diplomatic gala, but this one was different. The rigid hierarchy that had once separated officers by rank and species had given way to something more flexible. Jake stood near the engineering displays, wearing a dress uniform that finally felt comfortable. Go was explaining harmonic engineering principles to a group of Alterian scientists who hung on his every word. Across the room, Lisa was discussing trade negotiations with a Zenthari ambassador. She had learned to use her diplomatic skills to support innovation, rather than just maintain status quo. When the dancing began, Jake and Lisa found each other as naturally as breathing. This time Jake knew all the steps, but more importantly, they had learned to move together as partners in everything they did. You know, Lisa said as they danced, people still talk about our first dance. What do they say? That it was the moment when merit became more important than rank on this ship. Jake spun her around expertly. And what do you say? I say it was the moment I realized that the right partner makes everything possible. Around them, the gala continued with its diplomatic conversations and political maneuvering. But scattered, throughout the crowd were other couples who might never have met under the old system. A human engineer danced with an Alterian scientist. A Zenthari trade representative shared a table with a human maintenance worker. Captain Cross watched from the observation deck with satisfaction. The Federation was supposed to be about cooperation between different species. Sometimes it took humans to remind everyone what cooperation really meant. Ambassador Kethvar approached Captain Cross with 2 glasses of wine. Your species continues to surprise me, Captain. How so? You don't just solve problems, you change the way problems are understood. He gestured toward the dance floor where Jake and Lisa moved in perfect harmony. A year ago, I would have said their partnership was impossible. Now I see that impossible things happen when people focus on what they can accomplish together, instead of what separates them. Captain Cross accepted the wine and raised her glass. 2 impossible things. 2 impossible things, Kethvar agreed. On the dance floor, Jake and Lisa continued their dance, unaware of the larger conversation happening around them. They had learned that rank meant less than respect, that innovation mattered more than tradition, and that the best partnerships were built on understanding rather than hierarchy. The music played on, and the Starfire sailed through space carrying its cargo of diplomats and dreamers, engineers and ambassadors, all working together toward a future where the best ideas could come from anyone, regardless of their rank or species. And in the engine room, the machines hummed contentedly, maintained by people who understood that sometimes the most important thing wasn't following the manual, but knowing when to write a new one.